Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube art tutorial channel. I'm a professional artist working from my studio in Essex in the UK and painting plein air in the countryside. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. A couple of days ago I was sent a photograph by a friend that lives pretty close to me, and they're out walking the dog one evening at a local park, and across the park they could see this lovely view of the moon and shining. Also, the local park lights were lighting up the autumn leafing in the distance. So they asked if I would like to use that as a subject. So I like a challenge. It required lots of different techniques, or one or two different techniques that I've used before, and also it's interesting to see the way in which I use those techniques to develop the subject into from what would be normally an oil or an acrylic subject, to me anyway. But I decided to use watercolour, and let me lead you through the painting process. Well, here's the subject for this morning's studio painting. You've already seen the photograph, so I may as well get on and start painting really. Now we've got the moon in that position there. We've got some nice warm autumn colours with tree trunk just off of centre, with lots of dark leafing coming in over the top. It is an autumn scene, although there are some green leafing there, and I have put masking fluid on the moon area. I just considered that to be the best option for this particular painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is to wet completely wet a number 4 Daler Rowney mop brush. Doesn't point particularly well, but that's fine for this exercise and or for this painting. And I need a deep dark blue. Well, to me, Windsor blue or Prussian blue is more or less as dark a blue as I've got. And to that, to get that added depth, unusual thing for me, I'm adding Payne's Grey. Now that is an interesting addition to my colour mixers. Don't very often use Payne's Grey, but I'm looking for that dark sort of winter or autumn sky just as the sun has gone down and the moon's coming up. So I'm looking for that. So I'm using the two darkest colours I've got. It's going to be very cold because I'm using the Payne's Grey. This is the Winsor & Newton Payne's Grey. Right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to damp the paper. I've got a 1/2 inch brush here, so let me attend to that with this 1/2 inch. Just damp the paper across. Could use a larger brush than that really, but just keep reloading basically. That's the best way to show that, I think. There we go. Sweep that right the way across the moon area. And now I'm going to leave it in that position. I've not gone right the way down to the bottom, which I will do later. Now on into that goes this deep. Let's just let that dry in a bit while I add a little bit more colour, because I want this to be really deep and dark. With watercolour it's sometimes very difficult to get it extremely dark, but let's see what we've got. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? That's it, and we sweep that across like that, nice and even. Nice even wash. Now once we leave the top area, if you notice, it's getting slightly lighter. It's because there's more water in that lower area. So I'm adding a little bit more blue to this. No more Payne's grey as I head down. And the moon is masked, as you can see. Now I'm cleaning the brush and changing to a cobalt blue in the mix. This will ring the changes considerably with the colour, and that's what I want to do as I head down. There you go, nice. Still got to be dark. Add a little bit more Payne's grey to that. Still want quite a dark tone. And then once I get down into this lower area, just bring a little more dark tone into that. That's it. Now I'm going on to dry paper here, so that's going to make a big difference as to the tone value and how quick it dries, really. That's another issue once you get down to that sort of onto dry paper at that sort of level. Now I'm cleaning the brush thoroughly, taking off some moisture. Now I'm just putting in paint in cobalt blue here in a weaker, considerably weaker form. So there's more water in the mix there. Right, now I'm looking for those lovely autumn colours. So I'm going to change brush. I'm going over to a mop that points, loaded with water, and I'm going to use burnt sienna to try and get the browns that I've required for the tops of these trees. And as it blends with the tops of trees there, as it blends with the blue, you'll notice that it turns darker. And that's what we do for the start of the tops of these autumn trees. We try and create a sense of autumnal light in those. And I'm going, believe it or not, to overpaint the tree at this stage so that the tree trunk in the foreground, just so as it doesn't interfere with anything else. That's it. Then as I come down, I'm cleaning the brush thoroughly. A lot of blue in there, but that should work. And I'm using raw sienna. Could use yellow ochre for this next area. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in there, a little bit of cadmium yellow. I want to pick up that lovely autumn sort of yellowing, the glow that we've got in that lower area. And it's something that, quite an orange glow really. So we use cadmium lemon and a little of the raw sienna, maybe even a little bit of red, cadmium red. There we go. What about that? Try and get that lovely fresh autumn glow that I can see, very yellowy, orangey yellow in that lower area. There we go. Brilliant. Now I'm getting that little bit of run back there, which is very, very useful, because I think that'll be very handy to use later on. A bit more burnt sienna now in there. I'm mixing that with a bit of the little bit of the brown, sorry, a little bit of the blue that I had in the palette, because I want to pick up some darker areas within this lovely glow area, and I've got to pick up while it's still damp. Oh, there's an area there, a bit more water. Yeah, that's really, really light, so let's leave that. That's really light, so let's leave that. That's quite dark. Now, just before we finish that area, burnt sienna is going in to where it's very, very dark, the dark blue on my palette. And I'm going to finish that off around the tops there, just before it dries, because this area is extremely dark. I'm trying to catch that just before it dries to get a nice graduated feel of darks through to lights. There we are. That's that there. That's that little area there. Just picking around just as it's bleeding up, because those are the sort of areas we've got to pick up. We've got the trunk there, so that's not a problem. And then in the lower area, dark again in this lower area there. Nice bit of glow coming there, and just finishing fairly straight along the base there. Another little area of dark there. Area of dark there. That's just springing up like that. Lower area there like that. That's going to be light, so I'm cleaning the brush thoroughly, and I'm going to put a splash of cadmium lemon in there, just trying to get that to bleed in. Just a little bit of red as well, just to give it that glow. There we are. That seems to have married together quite well to get that nice sort of glow that we're getting, really. So I understand from the client, from lights underneath those trees. Like that. There we are. Clean that brush again. Now this is where I'm looking for the lemon, the cadmium lemon. I want to get a blurred edge now, where those two areas marry together. So I'm cadmium lemon with cadmium red. More cadmium lemon. I want it to be quite yellow. I can see that in the image, and quite light. Right, let's just see what we've got. Lovely. There we go. Now this has got to blur in to that background. Now, don't want it to run too much, but it does need to blur in. Just turn my heater off for a moment, just while I attend to this final little passage before we allow everything to dry. There we are. Now once I get to that stage, we get the blue brought back into the mix slightly for the grass area that's lit up in the background. Yeah, I think that more or less sorts out the basic principle of this scene. Bit of burnt sienna in places I can see, just before perhaps a little bit, even a little bit of red, for these autumn sort of colours that we can see in this area where the trees are overhanging, so that we're getting extremely dark again as we come down into the foreground area. So let's go in with some darker greens now into this area here, and extremely dark all of a sudden again in this bottom left hand corner, and that spreads up slightly to that area there. That's what makes that glow in the distance, like that. There we are. Yep, pretty pleased with that. Pretty happy with that all round, really. Can we allow that to dry, or is there anything we need to do? Maybe with a small brush. What have I got here? Yep, a smaller brush. Just put in some darker passages just before it dries into these areas. Only a damp brush this time, not a particularly wet brush, just to try and pick up some real dark colour around that sort of area there. That's perfect. That's lovely, and that wants to be quite dark brown and a little bit stippled, so that we can pick up where that finishes for the overhanging branches coming in there. Anything else? Around here, I believe, and certainly around there. Still wet, you see, so it's still blending nicely. Yeah, yep, quite pleased with that. Just keep that nice and flat there. Just got to be careful now because it's just beginning to dry up. Good. Let's allow that to completely dry. Well, the next stage of this painting, that has more or less completely dried. The next stage of the painting will be to lift off a little colour where I need something really light. And the best way to do this is to take a flat brush, damp it thoroughly, and then remove a little of the moisture onto paper, that kitchen paper, and then rub down the area that you need to be lighter, and see why it's loosening the paint and lifting it off. Clean the brush again, remove a little moisture, and carry on with that process. Now most of it is on the right hand side of the tree trunk, so we gradually move over to the left, spreading a little of the colour, because the left hand side is going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, and very dark on the far left, very light on the right. And then that comes up, so it's a lightly damped brush that lifts colour off. So a brush can apply colour, but it can also lift colour away. But of course the brush needs to be of the right sort of dampness, really, I suppose. That's the best way I can describe that. So that's the underside, where they're getting the glow from the light that's coming underneath that tree. So just make certain that's right. There we go. And we just look and see where we have any other light areas. There's an area there. Gradually attend to that. It gets darker there. That's it. Perfect. And that's the way you produce light areas once you've laid colour on in watercolour. Obviously you can use masking fluid that I've done there, and there is another light area there. Nice to pick out certain light areas that will need to be shown to achieve the effect, because you've got to remember the moon, it's there, is actually shining onto the subject, so there's a little bit of lighter colour there, a little bit of light reflection on the bark. This is what this is, bark of the tree. So that's pretty much all we need to do for that, really. Nice and light. Good. Also, there is a glow around the moon. So I'm lifting that away. Be a bit careful with this, because I don't want that to look like a star or anything like that. So I'm just lifting it off carefully to start with, spreading that colour out, and it will gradually dry lighter, so don't be too concerned with that. But this is how I intend to lose the hard edge, because it will create a hard edge if you use masking fluid, obviously, but I'm now softening that hard edge before I remove the masking fluid. So that way we're getting a sense of a glow around the moon. You know, watercolour is more versatile than a lot of people think, you know. Surprised what you can do with watercolour if you learn the techniques and how to handle it, really, because it does have its own qualities as regards that. There we are. And then we'll just make certain that this is spread so we don't get a real hard edge around that. Don't want to go out too far with this. Yeah, perfect. There we go. So that's the way you lift off colour if you want to create a lighter tone on a dark area in watercolour. Now going to paint in the trees or the leafing above. Now these are very, very dark, so there again I'm using my Winsor Blue. I'm using a flat brush again for that. The Winsor Blue, and I'm going to use Indian Red to get my dark, so like a warm dark really, colour. A little bit of Payne's Grey as well. Yep, just to really darken that off. It's got to appear sort of very dark to start with. It will be green later, because we'll be putting a bit of yellow with that. But overall, it's got to be quite dark. And let's see where we go with this. There we are. See the way it's really, really dark and quite dense there too. So not too many open branch, open gaps. It's quite dark in that top right hand corner. Don't overwork these brush strokes, otherwise you'll find you tend to lose, you tend to take off paint. That is another thing when you're learning that you've got to be very careful with, particularly if you're using wood pulp paper like I am here, that you actually don't remove the underpainting. So easy to do, very dense there again. Allow it to dry. If you want another layer of colour, allow it to completely dry. That's the way to get that extra layer of colour. Got a bit more red in there just to get a feel of warmth and depth of colour. Now I'm adding more blue, and I'm going to add a bit of cadmium lemon. Now let's go cadmium yellow, because that will give me a slightly green hue to that, which is what I'm looking for. Just trying to freshen those colours up a little. So this should be slightly greeny. There we go. Job to see probably on the camera, but it is slightly on the greeny side. Quite dense around the top again. I'm using more or less the side of the brush to try and tease away and get the feeling of leafing. That's what I'm trying to depict here, which is it seems to be coming along quite well. A bit more yellow, a bit more blue now, to get that dark sort of green colour. Very dark green, almost blue green really. Suppose that's probably the colour that I'm thinking about. And there is just a couple of other areas coming in this side that are very dark. It won't be long before I'm going to have to put in some lighter tones. See the way I'm leaving gaps now? Try and give the impression of leafing. Right, now this is where we add more yellow, and the more yellow you add to this mix, the lighter it will become. So, and we need to go light fairly quickly here to give the desired effect. One or two darker passages. A little bit of a darker passage there. Just got to be careful we don't get too close to that moon at this stage. And then there's another lighter branch there. Good. Now let's go in with even more yellow. Let's really stimulate that yellow and see what we can get. There we go. There we go. See the way that's brought up a really quite a light green, because that's what I can see, and I feel that we should use them use the photograph as best as we can. Taken by a client of mine while out walking the dog, apparently. There's another light area there. Some light areas as we come towards the moon itself. There's just a little patch there. It's not all dark. A little really light area there. Could put in some more darks as we go, but at this stage just got to try and give an impression of leafing in the background there, and another area there. You can always add more darks, as I always say, but if you add too many, you're in danger of spoiling the effect very early on. We can add darks as we head down. There are one or two of these greens that hang down there, more or less behind that trunk. I can always lift off again if I need it. Put some darker patches in shortly. I want to do around the moon as a separate issue for this. Right, now I'm going to use slightly different technique here to try and define some branches, and I've opened the hairs of the brush up just to try and get the feeling of branches just coming out in the lower area. Sort that out in a second. There we go. Got some darks going, but let's get all these lighter areas in first. We've got medium tones there. That's why we're not seeing much of the lower area of the branches that I'm putting in around that area, because they will be darker shortly. Let's just put the lighter ones in first. Right, now we go into the darker area, and I'm going to use a bit more red in this. And there again, I'm using the stippling effect to try and achieve that. So you open the hairs of the brush by tapping onto your paper, or of course you do need to tap onto the palette. You can hear me tapping away, and now we have some open areas here, and I'm just tapping away, trying to get turning the brush too. That can help sometimes. Sometimes the brush produces the perfect shape, other times not as good. Just depends how the brush shapes up when you tap it. Some nice little passages there, overhanging leafing. These sort of subjects are not easy to achieve, but in general, you know, sticking with these basic principles, normally, you know, most people should be pretty successful. Most artists that have a little bit of knowledge of art or using watercolour can quite often achieve really good results with this sort of technique. Just getting in and on the outer edges of some of those overhanging leaf shapes. Don't want to overcomplicate it. I'm only giving an impression of leafing. I'm not painting every single leaf. If you can get the general feeling of that sort of thinking, then as we come down again, it gets quite dark in places in this lower area. So we're using a slightly different technique to the technique that I've used sometimes in the past, but I do feel that it's the sort of technique that beginning to see a glow around there now. Can you see where we're getting a bit of a glow around the moon area? So it's sort of having the desired effect. Now, these extremes, we've got to be a bit careful here. Don't want these to be too pronounced. There, you know, you will get just the odd branch that sort of just comes down like that into that light area. There we go. And another one perhaps there. You know, I'm using basically the all you do is use a photograph as a guide. That's what you do. We do have another darker branch coming from that side of the tree, heading from there, I would presume. So you need to justify that by that one there. That's it. What else we got? Oh yes, there's another little clump coming in here, although I don't want to impose too much that side. There we are. So we're beginning to get that nice feel now of light. It's always the case when you start painting a scene that to start with you've got light areas, you've got some dark areas, but it doesn't pull together. Not until you get other tones within the painting, and if you've got the first tones correct, then there's no reason why, you know, you shouldn't be basically successful. Right, now I'm going to clean the brush now. Now I've already got mixes in the palette, so I'm going to use some of those to put in the area around the moon. And this has to be quite light, slightly bluey, because you're getting a reflection of the moon. Let's see if I can show you how to do that. Yeah, I think we're... And then we smudge with our finger where it all turns a bit sort of glary, if you like glares around that area there. Don't overdo it, just sit back and allow that to do its own thing. Well, I'm allowing that to dry before I remove the masking fluid, and I'm going to concentrate in the lower area now, getting the trees in, the tree trunks, and these are going to be Windsor Blue and Burnt Sienna. Try that mix. Windsor Blue and Burnt Sienna. Not dark, sort of warm green. And what we've got to do, we've got to get them to soften into the clump of leafing that is this glow that we can see. So what we do, we damp the top of the paper and we touch into that damp area with this colour, and then we draw it down. So that's that trunk there, blurring nicely, and as the brush runs out of paint, get a nice glow from that. We're going to bring that right down because I want that to be virtually in that. There we are. Can you see where I've got the glow on that right hand side? And I'm damping again there and using the same mix, coming into that damp area and down. And as the brush runs out of paint, I have to reload again. Drag the brush across the paper to get the dark edge down the left hand side with the glow down the right. Touch up into that and allow that to dry. That's the key to this game. It's the drying that you have to wait for, because if you don't, quite often you don't get the desired result. Another tree there, use a bit more water in that, so let's do the left hand side first, that's better. Then all of a sudden on the right, a bit more colour into that, there you go. You can always darken at a later stage, but these are branches that are, or trunk work, it's going up into the sunlit area. Well, not sunlit, but the light area. There we are. Now weaken that considerably, because I want to put in the odd branch that nestles away. There we are. It's gone a bit light there, but that's not a problem. We'll attend to that shortly. And there is another possible branch there that goes away. Another little branch there. Be careful we don't overdo this branch business, because it's always a thing to do. Now, something that, you know, we don't want to do. Now, I want to show a little bit more sort of warmth or glow in these. That's got to be lighter, so I'm going to use the lifting off method here. Get my flat again, so it's not too loaded, and I'm lifting off there, so we've got light against dark in that part of the trunk. Then we've got dark against light, which is the lower part of the trunk. Needs to be just a tone darker than that, possibly. It's amazing how these sort of techniques work when using watercolour paints, you know. Branch coming away from that, but other than that it's quite light and fairly good. And then we just lift away and just allow that to dry. Okay, so we're going to have another dark area here, burnt sienna, a little bit of burnt sienna, quite delicate touches of colour this, not too dark. There's a tree there standing up there again, soften with the finger this time so it's not quite as harsh. There, and I might even soften where it sits on the, there we are, just so as it sits in the, and there's another one there. It's not too chunky. and that goes away and softens. Another one here, slightly smaller, and another slightly larger one there, goes up into the canopy. Brilliant. Then finally there are some little light ones, and I'm lifting off with this flat again, and that goes up into that. So it's dark against light, light against dark. Once it hits the light area, then you just leave well alone. Lighten that just a touch more. There we go. Brilliant. Now, with very weak colour, we just show off a little bit of the branch work. In the lower part of those trees. Yeah, that seems to be. Allow it to dry. Don't get too concerned if things don't look quite as you would have liked. There we go. Just putting in one or two little touches here and there. A little bit of yellowing to that lighter colour there. Can just see one or two smaller branches possibly. Can't see them on the photograph, but that'll be fine for that. You know, you've got to make your trees look like trees, immaterial of what the photograph shows us, really. Because if you don't, then the viewer will not be able to see the photograph, so they have to, in most cases anyway, they will purely be looking at what you paint, so consequently needs to be put down in a viewing sort of way, really, so it's looking like trees in the distance. Now I'm going to gently remove the masking fluid from around the moon, which looks to me as if that's come off quite nice. And we do have a little bit of colour in that moon area, so we don't want that to be completely white. Remove a little bit of colour there with a damp brush. It's just teasing the paint away from the paper, really, and I'm just trying to gently soften that edge. Very nice. Lovely. Got that nice little feel, and I'm just lifting off right in the centre just before it dries. Now, one of the most important things in this painting will be the dominance of this tree. Now, starting off with Payne's Grey, Winsor & Newton, Artist Quality, Prussian Blue or Windsor Blue, and Indian Red. And this gives me a very, very dark colour. And we bring that up like that, we follow the edge, and it gradually sort of tapers a little. up to there. Yep, that's fine. Now, adding a little more yellow to the mix to get a slightly more greeny grey to this side while it's still damp, and then gradually tapering away again. A bit more yellow now, just to create a greeny grey. That's what I can see anyway. There we are. And that continues up there for that branch. All will be revealed shortly. Then quickly soften that area in. Just before it dries. That way, hopefully, all being well, wind in the right direction, get a lovely rounded feel to that trunk. Then it goes really, really dark in that bottom corner again, but we'll sort out the real darks again in just a moment. And while we have some dark colour there, we need, let's get in with a bit stronger dark colour, we need to put in an area there, and it gradually gets lost in amongst the darker trees up the top, the darker leafing up the top. But in general, we have a really dark edge down that back. Trees are not always dead straight, so just give that a little bit of movement. Then while we have this dark colour, that's also teased just in here and across there in a soft form. That's why it's nicely damp. And then we have that real dark area there. We do have a touch of light there. Not sure whether I should worry about that. And another area of dark on the underside of where this branch shoots off, goes away like that, and that then shoots into there. Then we've got a bit of spreading of that colour to do again there. Into there, that's good. Now we need to go dark again to get this dark area just above that branch that slips away there. It's all very delicately painted. Doesn't want to be go. Just before that dries, I need to just damp that off and spread that away. Okay, slightly blue, I like that. And then that colour then goes into the darker area at the top. And this colour will also be, add a bit more yellow to that. I want that to be a little bit on the green side. And that goes off up into the canopy again. There we go. That's brilliant. And I like that little edge there, just soften it. Like that. It all blends together there. We'll sort that out in a second in the form of putting in dark area. In actual fact, that might be benefit just to be completely dark anyway, to be fair. Yep, best way is to leave it at that, I think. And now we're going dark again with red and Payne's grey, Indian red, Payne's grey, because we want to get this dark branch that really just heads off out this way, like that. Not a great deal of tone into that. We'll deal with the smaller branches with a rigger shortly. Here we go, that's better. Got a bit of glare onto that is not quite good when you're trying to see what I'm trying to achieve here, but overall I think it's come off quite well. Once it completely dries, you'll see exactly the tone that I've got there. I'm sure I've got the right tone. Good. Clean that brush. Now I'm going to use the rigger to put in the sort of medium to smaller branches, and they tend to spread out a little. So what have we got here? We've got, oh right, we've got quite a dark branch there that I can see, and because that's damp there, see the way it blends nicely into and creates an effect that it's softening into the trunk area. And so that's that, like that. And you know, I'm making this up a little bit as I go along, because obviously we need to have a good looking trunk and tree work. We don't want to just dot that in there a little bit, just so that makes it look like a set. And what else have we got? Oh, we've got that. Just looking to see what branches really now we do have. Need to soften that just a touch so it gets darker there again, but I don't want to get too dark too early, otherwise it won't look right. There we go. And then while it's still a little damp, take another branch off there, and we have quite a dark area again. This tree trunk work turns quite dark again as it slides up out of picture. Thicken that up just a touch and put that away like that, and then you continue with that sort of process really. A little bit in there while it's still damp, because that'll bleed nicely. And we get bleed with dampening the paper. Spreads through like that, and we'll have another branch coming off there, and that gives us a justification for some smaller branches that are supporting these areas down here. And that is another area where, you know, you need justification for what you're doing. You know, quite often when you're looking at photographs, you assume that the photograph doesn't actually lie. So, and I suppose it shouldn't really, but when you look at a painting, I think quite often you can tend to get very critical of the artist, which quite rightly so if you're looking for a particular subject, but you know, so in many ways you've got to make it, your painting, better or more believable than any photograph, which is not an easy thing to do. And now I'm trying to give the effect of bark with a little bit of cross hatching in places and a little bit of softening texture on the bark. Don't want too much of this bark texture business, because as you probably know, I'm not one for detail, so doesn't, you know, I'm not into that sort of bark effect. I'm going to be a little darker in that little area there, just as it turns underneath and round there. Just felt that that was required. And then just streak that in this lower area. A little bit darker as it runs out of picture. There. Well, now we just need to look at the odd real dark shadow actually on the ground, and these are dark greens, so Windsor blue, cadmium yellow, reasonable amount of cadmium just to make it yellow, green, sorry. So a nice green. Then we just add a bit more mix to that. There we go. Need enough water in these mixes to get the desired effect. Then we need the red, the Indian red again, because we're looking for a dark green, and it is very dark. Let's just remove that flat brush there, and extremely dark. So what we're doing, we're picking up a really dark colour here, and we need soft edges. So all we do, as you know, for soft edges, we damp an area of paper there, like that. Then we paint this dark colour into it, and that way get a nice soft edge. And where we want hard edges, we'll leave it dry. Bit more red now as we come forward in the mix. And there again, once we get to this side, it's got to be damp again. So we get soft edge, so we get a hard dark edge this side, or not hard edge, but a nice clean colour. But then as we slide across from there to there, it goes dry again. So that's the way we do it. There we go. A nice real dark, a little bit lighter as we come forward, just to ring the changes. I'm going to damp that down there first, then pull it away so as we don't get a funny display of colour there. And then in this foreground we sort of go dark there and dark there, like that. And this time I'm going to soften it while it's still damp. So just drag that across like that, dragging the paint, giving a soft feel to it as it goes away. Like that. And it gradually disappears into the distance. Very good. Yep, I think that possibly just needs to be allowed to dry, really. Well, that's the subject for this morning's painting here in the studio. And there is the finished watercolour. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that video of me painting this little subject, lovely tree with autumn leafing, lit up in the background by the lights in the park. And if you have, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the link bottom right hand corner. You'll receive notifications when I upload more videos. But in the meantime, if you are a painter, then happy painting, and if not, I sincerely hope you enjoyed watching, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you very much for watching.